All right. Great. Well, welcome everybody. We are excited to have you joining us here tonight for our career panel. We are super much looking forward here to hearing the stories of 4 of our alums and their career path to share with all of you, our prospective students, our applicants, and we're very happy that you can join us all for the call tonight. I would like at this moment to introduce to you Dean Pearson. Dean Pearson will be the moderator of tonight's event. And for those of you who've never met Dean Pearson, she has been the Dean of the Law School for over 35 years. And her leadership and her guidance has just been tremendous. I can't count how many times I have heard from alumni that they would not be a lawyer if it wasn't for Jan Pearson. So it's her leadership, her student-centered focus and dedication, which is the foundation of our collaborative culture here at San Joaquin College of Law. So welcome and thank you, Jan Pearson.
Well, thank you. My goodness, I'm looking at my photo on the screen and I look like a munchkin. Right? Welcome all of the attendees. I'm very glad to see you. I have to say I'm absolutely thrilled to see the alums because I don't get to see them very often. And I remember when all of them were in my torch class, and I remember each of them very well. So thank you. This is a very impressive group of people, and thank you for being willing to participate in this. One of the things that all the different careers are going to show you is the wide variety of things that you can do with legal education. We learned a number of things out of the pandemic, and unfortunately for a lot of them, one of them was that their jobs could disappear. One of the big strengths of a law degree is that you control your own destiny. You will always have a package of skills that you can turn to if you need to because of jobs changing, a pandemic, or whatever. Generally in the Central Valley, jobs are plentiful. It's been a rare occasion that people have not easily gotten employed, but it's always nice to know that like a couple of these people, you can open your own office and be extremely successful. You also have a lot of the tools to affect change and assistance in your community if that's your objective. So I'm just going to briefly introduce each of the alums, and then we'll ask them to discuss a little bit about what their current employment is and what exactly it is that they do. So going alphabetically, the first is Maribel Hernandez. She works as corporate counsel and employment law for North America for Maxim Integrated Products in San Francisco. Next is David Ibarra, who runs the law office of Ibarra. And then Alexia Kirkland, who runs the law office of Kirkland Law, California. And finally, the Honorable Tripp, who's a judge on the Superior Court of Tulare County. So Maribel, why don't you kick us off by explaining what your job is and maybe a little bit of how you got into that position.
Sure. Hopefully everyone can hear me well. So as Jan said, my name is Maribel, and just welcome everyone. We're really excited to have all of you. So I currently work as in-house counsel, corporate counsel for Maxim Integrated. It's a semiconductor company, which we call a tech company in San Jose. But I'm working virtually from home in Clovis. So it's nice to be home. So how I guess I began my journey is I actually started taking a course in human resources. I was a business major, really loved the law, and decided to go to law school, but I felt like I was too passionate for that field. So I decided to not do that. I figured if I did law school, I could never get married. And traditionally, I really wanted that. So I ended up taking a job with Gap Inc. And we did a startup of the Old Navy Distribution Center. But like any one of us, if it's a calling for you, you'll be nudged. And ultimately, I ended up in law school. And I was just thrilled to be at San Joaquin, primarily because I could do both. I could work in the day and then go to class at night. And but my passion really was to go back in-house. So after I graduated law school, I was told for you to be an in-house counsel for a company, you have to go litigate. So I did that for about 12 years. And then I ended up applying for an in-house role and moved out of the area, because there aren't many of those here locally, at least not at the time. And then I ended up at Maxim, which is where I am now. Primarily what I do is I'm their corporate counsel. I handle all of USA and Canada, and then I support global projects. So it could be anything from, I don't know, contracts, COVID, all that is coming up now. So that's kind of where I am now.
What about you?
And again, my name is David Ibarra, and I am the owner of Goldberg and Ibarra. We primarily do workers' compensation. We do a little bit of personal injury and Social Security as well. The way that my journey started into law, I actually was in high school, believe it or not, and I had a speech and debate teacher who was having a little quick course in the middle of one of his history classes, and I actually missed the first day, and the second day was consisted of me watching the people cross-examining each other, and I thought to myself, I can do this. I can really do this, and I like to argue, which is what most people think that attorneys just primarily do, but believe it or not, we do a lot more. And I asked the instructor if I can jump in, and he said, no, you don't really want to jump in because you already missed the first day. I insisted, and then after I kept insisting, he let me in, and he said, okay, I want you to try out for the speech and debate team now. So I did that, and I was on the speech and debate team. And after a while, I just began to ask, what can I do with the skill? Because while I was pretty good in school, I just didn't really know what I was going to do. And he said, you could become an attorney. And that's something that has always really called out to me ever since high school. And that really started my journey into law. And I followed through. I went to SJCL, and I actually just landed into workers' compensation. I did not think that it would be an area of law that I would like. It's not something that people really find appealing. It's not as exciting as full tech stuff, I would say. But for me, I definitely have a passion for it. And because of that, I have been in it since 2010, and I can literally see myself doing this for the rest of my life.
It's nice to have a career that feels like a proper fit and that you'd be happy doing for the rest of your life. And I have been fortunate enough to have that same possibility. So Alexia, tell us a little bit about what you and your firm do.
All right. I went to Fresno State. My undergrad degree is in business, legal environment, and economics. Coming out of undergraduate, I went straight working for the state in workers' compensation. I remember sitting in my cubicle, and I would work so hard on my work, and I worked so hard on my cases, and then I would hand it off to an attorney, and he got to go to court, and he got to speak for me, and he was the one that basically made the appeal to the judge. And I thought to myself, wow, I'm working so hard, and someone else goes and they have to go to battle for me, and the problem is they're not going to have that same passion. So while I was stuck in my cubicle, I could not advocate on the work that I worked so hard for. And I said, you know, I could do this. I can go to law school. Looking at the different law schools in the area, I wanted to make sure that family was still a priority for me, because family is always a priority for me. In undergrad and in high school, my main objective, what I did in life, I was a mom. I was a mom in high school, mom in undergrad, a single mother at that. And so I needed a school that understood that there is value in a life experience. There is value in not fitting with the normal, which you would believe a lawyer would look like or be like. So I did find San Joaquin College of Law. It allowed me to do a change in career, also make sure that I was there for my kids, because during law school, I had more kids. Right when I received my acceptance letter, and me and my husband were so like proud and happy, then it was like, oh yeah, you're expecting. So right before, and I mean literally right before I started my first year, I had my second daughter. And then during the summer of my second year, I found out I was expecting and had my third daughter. So I figured, okay, if I'm going to have a kid every year, I better get on the 3-year program because I can't afford 4 kids. But it ended up working out. And so I ended up graduating, took advantage of everything the school had to offer, and later went on to a workers' comp firm, and then decided to open up my own practice to have more control over the flexibility with my schedule and my kids for that work-life balance.
Judge Tripp. How you became a judge, and what do you do as a judge?
All right. I think I'm still wondering how I became a judge, actually. It feels like a dream sometimes, or maybe they made a mistake, but they're paying me now, so I know it's official. So, you know, it's kind of it's not something that I actually planned. I never really thought about it much. I wanted to become a lawyer at some point, and I took that path, but it was kind of a muddled one. I dropped out of school kind of early. When I first started college, I was going to try to be a college wrestler, and that wasn't working. So I decided to work, and then went back to school, graduated from junior college, and then went off to Fresno State and graduated from that. Still wasn't sure if I was going to go to law school, even though I majored in poli-sci. And then from there, decided to go to law school, went to San Joaquin, of course. And then I had a few different jobs, doing criminal defense, some civil. Then I became a prosecutor, and that was the big chunk of my career, 13 years of that. And over that time, you know, learned a lot, really. And then what really prompted everything, there was this change in the state, and we all kind of feel it right now. There's a lot of changes in our justice system that's happening. And I always felt kind of the back of my mind that things weren't quite right, that things weren't maybe on the even playing field that they should be. And I had this opportunity to become a commissioner with the Tulare County Superior Court. And that doesn't come up too often. Actually, it's probably less common than becoming a judge, actually. Tulare County, the last position they had open, actually an open spot where people could apply, had been like 20, 30 years. And this was a brand new spot. It was created from basically a pilot program from the state to have a commissioner review all in custodies and try to release people instead of them having to post bail. So what we found in the state, where there's a lot of people who were in custody, that simply the reason they weren't out is because they couldn't afford to be out. And so at that point, I applied, I got that job, and I found out that I really not only loved it, but I could see that, again, the state was changing. There was going to be more of these changes. And there's been some new case laws come out and so on. So during that time, I was really loving what I was doing, but this opportunity, I was really pushed by a lot of the judges that we had to become a judge. And I thought it would take 2 or 3 years. I talked to every judge in our county. I think a lot of judges will tell you this story. They wait around 5, 6 years, sometimes even longer, to become a judge. And I feel very blessed and fortunate. It only took me about a year. And it was sort of a whirlwind. COVID was happening. Everything was Zoom, just like now. And I just happened to keep going through the process, and I kept going through interview after interview, and almost to the point I almost went too smooth. So I still pinch myself in some ways because I heard of all the other stories that other judges went through. And so, but I think it was just timing. I was fortunate to be in a good spot with what I was doing, with what the state was looking at, and revamping our whole criminal justice system. So I fit a lot of areas that made a lot of sense to the culture and in the just our society as a whole that was changing. So and I got the appointment. I got the appointment in December. So now my current assignment, I'm doing misdemeanors, which I love. We're very busy. We're backlogged for about a year, maybe 2. So plenty of work, but it's a lot of fun.
I'm going to jump around a little bit, and I'm going to ask, and I'll start with David. Was there a particular catalyst that was driving you to go to law school?
Yes, definitely. For me, it's very personal. Back in high school, just about the end of high school, my father actually was injured on the job. He had actually been injured multiple times on the job, and he had no representation. There was nobody helping him out. He didn't speak any English, and so it was very difficult for him to navigate through the workers' comp process. Anybody who does workers' comp knows that it is a specialized field, and for an individual who is an immigrant who has a 3rd grade level of education and doesn't speak any English, obviously it's a lot more difficult for that person. And I saw my dad go through it and suffer through it. And for me, watching that, I just thought there had to be really a better way. There had to be somebody that could help him. And unfortunately, he didn't obtain an attorney. But I always felt a sense of really that it was injustice. It was that I saw there, and I tried to see if there was anything that I can do to right that wrong. And I tell this story a lot of times to my clients as well too, that after seeing that and witnessing my father and my family really going through quite a bit during those years, and I started in workers' comp. Like I said earlier, I never in a million years imagined that that's what I would be doing. But within the first week, there was a gentleman who had clearly just gotten off of work, out of the fields, just like my father. And he was still in his work boots, his work clothes, and he was sitting across the desk from me. And he had, dirt on his sleeve, dirt on his collar, and I could literally still smell the soil on him. And it reminded me so much of my dad and seeing him come home every day after work. And so when that happened, I realized, oh my gosh, I'm helping my father. Like I'm finally doing it. And so when that happened, that's when I realized I can do this for the rest of my life. And it was literally the first week that I started working in workers' comp. But just seeing what my dad went through and knowing that he wasn't the only one, that's definitely something that started the fire really in it for me.
That sounds like destiny to me. So you don't really have a choice. Alexia, what about you? Is there some catalyst?
For me, dealing with law, the catalyst was basically understanding that I came from a community that did not have lawyers. I came from a very, 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 like some of the neighborhoods in Fresno that you think of where you're like, I don't want to be here after a certain time at night. Those are the neighborhoods that I grew up in. And so for me, it's like I had the opportunity to see how injustice happens when people are renting apartments, when they're getting evicted, when they're trying to get their benefits, when they're just dealing in normal life. And so some of the people who suffer the hardest in the legal system are those that are also disadvantaged from a socioeconomic standpoint. So seeing that growing up, I understood that there's a need for representation. Being African-American and Latino, I realized that there is a need for representation for us to have a voice. And when I say us, I mean like everyone, women, men, people of color, LGBTQ. There's a reason for all of us to have a voice. And so when I realized that law school is that way that we can have a voice and provide a voice to the communities that we come from. That was the catalyst for me to understand that there is power in that degree. And if we use that power appropriately, we can help other people that are so much more disadvantaged than we are.
Maribel, what about you?
You know, it's hard to pinpoint. Initially, I thought it was just my passion for the law. I fell in love with it to the point I did nothing but study, and my grades shot up in my undergrad. I was a business major, taking an HR class given by an attorney. But it was during that process that I had an incident with my two younger brothers who were involved in a tragic accident. And I remember going, you know, luckily they both survived, but one of them was before the court, and they were going to determine sentencing because he had been drinking and they were trying to get away from a shooting. And unfortunately, my younger brother, who's the oldest of the two, got everyone in the car and they hit some van of some sort. So we were before the court, and I just remember when the judge had asked a question, does anyone have anything to say? Oh my God, sorry, I didn't intend to cry. But I remember going up, and in my short words, I remember thinking to myself, there has to be an exception. So I remember asking the judge, what would you have done if you had a brother who would potentially be shot? Would you have left also? Would it have mattered to you that somebody was drinking, or if you weren't drinking? And I remember he got sentenced for 5 months, you know, into this like juvie camp of some sort. But I would say that that's probably what kept motivating me, not because I realized it was, but because I saw an opportunity to have a voice. And it was the one thing that really mattered to me. And I guess it was family.
I can't cry during this. Sorry,
I didn't intend that. It just came out.
Tripp, what about you?
I don't know if I'm gonna top the first three. These are getting tougher. So for me, I think it was kind of simple, meaning somebody already said this about loving kind of to argue, and a lot of people, you know, will say that, oh, you should be a lawyer because you love to argue. But over time, what I really found was it wasn't winning and losing arguments. I love the challenge of it. So over the years, I've had many things presented from me where I could just simply have walked away, ignored it. I didn't have to get in the middle of some sort of legal issue, but I wanted to find out where my limits were, or what I knew or what I didn't know. And that's what the law really provides. It provides you a push to really, I think, not only find yourself, but find out many things like how things work, how things don't work, why the law is the way it is, why it could change. And so that constant challenge of seeing opportunities, seeing things that maybe you don't quite understand, being told an old story about the law that really isn't true. You find out years later it's not true, that's not accurate. All those things interacted. So that was my catalyst that's built into my personality. So it challenges you almost every day. You could practice something for a very long time and still not be an expert in it. My favorite saying of them all, because that's why they call it the practice of law, because we're always practicing. We never become an expert. We want to be really badly, but we never quite get there because something else will challenge us. And that's what really drove me to go to law school.
Well, what I'm going to ask each of you next is to describe an event or a case that you had that was the most gratifying to you, that whatever accomplished was out of that case gave you the most personal satisfaction. And Maribel, I'll jump back to you. She's blinking like.
So prior to going in-house, I litigated, and I had a case with an outside client in Arizona. And I remember because I've always practiced employment law, I guess first as an HR professional for about 12, 13 years, and now as an attorney. But at the time, the father had been accused of being discriminatory. And he had 3 cases against him. So I got to meet the dad, and I was on an airplane, went to go visit him, and he had a disease. Well, I guess I can say it now. He's now passed, but he had Parkinson's disease. And the attorney in town kept insisting to depose him, but there was many events that were happening that were creating, making it impossible to have him deposed. And finally, we ended up at the deposition. And I remember as he was being challenged in many ways, being accused of being a discriminatory person, I remember the story that he shared, and that was that he, in his kind words, you know, he was probably, I think at the time he was in his late 70s. He was explaining that he understood being disabled because his father actually was blind, and he taught him how to build. And his father taught him how to build so much so that he ended up having an entire apartment complex here in town, has casinos, I mean, so many things, but it was all through his father's blind eyes. And I remember after that deposition, he called me over to him and he asked me, can you please win this case for me? Because I don't discriminate. And I remember it touched home for me because I'm really into parents, right? Parents are really important. But hearing him say that really, I guess, impacted me so much, because in many ways, I think when people think of companies, they think of these conglomerates that are just evil. And the truth is, oftentimes these owners are really not evil at all, but they may have certain individuals in place that maybe are not treating people a particular way. So I would say it was the most impactful for me, because we went on and we won all his cases for him, and he has a clean bill, and he's left us now, but in our hearts, he still is.
David, what about you?
I definitely have a lot of fun and exciting cases, but probably the one that I was most excited about, believe it or not, didn't really turn out to be like a big winning case where there was tons and tons of money. But it was very gratifying because, again, I do workers' comp, and this individual was a truck driver, and he was assaulted, and he was at a gas station. Somebody struck him in the back of the head with a 2x4. Now, believe it or not, I had many cases like this where people get assaulted at a gas station, and he had a traumatic brain injury, but he had pressure building up in the back of his eye. Now, his main complaints were really from his neck and a bit from the concussion, but he started having these really bad headaches. And it turned out that because of this trauma that he suffered, pressure was building up behind his eye, and it was actually compressing on all of the nerves. And the workers' comp insurance company they had accepted the case. They were paying his benefits. They were paying for his medical treatment. But under the workers' comp system as it currently sits, the insurance company can pretty much deny medical treatment at any time that they want for any silly reason. And they were denying a implant. It was a valve implant that the doctor wanted to do. He needed to install a valve in the back of this gentleman's eye to relieve the pressure. Medication wasn't working, and none of the other treatments were working. And they were actually recommending, the insurance company was recommending LASIK surgery because it was, from what I recall, it was traumatic glaucoma, but they were treating it as if it was just a regular type of glaucoma case. So his eye doctor or his treating physician was pleading with the insurance company, saying, this gentleman is about to go blind. He's going to go blind if he doesn't have this valve implanted. And I worked closely with the doctor. There was these technicalities, and I won't bore you guys with that, but I was able to fight it and get to court and get the valve implant approved. And we won, and it was such a huge sigh of relief, because the gentleman was literally going blind as we were sitting there, and the judge just could not believe that the insurance company was denying it. We ended up winning that, and he regained all of his vision back. And because of that, when in workers' comp, your award is primarily based on how you are impacted. So there's no pain and suffering in workers' comp, which is always news to a lot of people. But because of that, his case actually wasn't worth as much as you would think. But to me, it was still just probably the funnest victory that we had, because I remember us celebrating and the gentleman wiping tears from his eyes when we got the approval from the judge. And it was very touching to see this gentleman who was barely able to see shed tears, right there at the courtroom. So it was very, very satisfying.
Judge Tripp, what's the one you remember as meaning the most to you?
Well, I can't stick to one. I can give you two. That's okay. I'll be quick though. But I did my major area of work as a prosecutor was mostly homicides. I did 4 or 5 homicide trials. I litigated a bunch more. But you're always going to wonder what you're going to do when it's opposite of what you're supposed to, or what you're geared up to do. I was supervising a homicide unit, a lot of very good lawyers in the unit. And one of the lawyers who was still newer, but a very good lawyer, came to me one day, and he's a pretty hard charging lawyer. If he gets a homicide case, he'll work it very vigorously. Well, he came to me and he said, hey, there's a problem. And that's not something he would normally say in a case, that there's a problem with whether these, and it was 2 brothers that were charged with murder, whether they committed the crime. And we talked about it, and from there it kind of rolled where I got really involved in the case, and really, to make that story short, but I mean, 2 people charged with murder, been in custody for about 2.5 years. And I worked with all the law enforcement within the office, a lot of hours, and we eventually dismissed the case. And it just felt, and a lot of what you're hearing, what a lot of people are saying is, you got to do the right thing. You're required to do the right thing, and it's not always going to be some major victory where you get your name in the paper, or you win a lot of money, or you get even a pat on the back. The hardest part I had to do in that case is after we dismissed it, and it was the right thing to do. The evidence wasn't there. There was a lot of issues with the case that pointed to these weren't even the right people. I had to go talk to the family, the victim, and the victim's family was just a guy that happened to be in the wrong place at the wrong time and was shot and killed, and explain to them why this happened and why we couldn't go forward. And we had nowhere else to go. We didn't know who really did it. So I couldn't even give them that. Like, oh yeah, we're going to find the people right next door. I couldn't even give them that. And it's a hard thing to do, to tell somebody bad news, to tell them that things that they don't want to hear, but it was the right thing to do. The reason I have 2 is, like I said, I worked a lot of homicides. I got a case, it's a 2002 case, it's a filed case, but the person had never been caught. He had lived in Washington, came down to our county and murdered over a dispute over money, murdered the victim, and we went to his house, shot him, but he shot him in front of his daughter. His daughter's like 7 or 8 years old at the time. And he fled and he left the country. So we needed to figure out a way to get him back. And to do that, you have to work with the feds. And you think California's tough, wait till you go try to do anything with the federal government. And so I didn't know anybody that ever done this before. I had to do it all from scratch, figure it out. I worked on it for 9 months because you just got to have everything perfect in order. And so what happens, it goes up to Washington, it goes through whatever agency is over there. You're shocked how many agencies exist with different acronyms of something that you don't even know what that means. Well, they have to run it through a treaty through Mexico, because that's where he was. Because he was a Mexican national, you just couldn't go and grab him. And so, it caused an international incident if you did. So I had to put this thing together, worked on it for 9 months, had to make, I don't know how many phone calls. Now this daughter's now in her 20s. She has never had justice for her father. She actually is the one that came to us and said, hey, what are you guys doing about this case? And we had said, well, there's nothing we can do. But when we looked at it, there's something we could do. So I got the whole thing done. I was very nervous of, I've made so many calls to Washington, never met any of these people, never even saw what they look like. And was told many times to go away, leave us alone. They would kind of give me the runaround to kind of dissuade me. But overall that time, finally got it done. They approved it and the warrant was granted. And it's now in the process, because this is still 2 years ago now. It's in the process of going through their extradition requirements. So, hopefully this person will be brought back and face his day in court. I mean, that's the goal. So, and so I was talking about earlier, you just don't ever know where you're going to end up. I never knew I was going to end up trying to do some extradition thing through the federal government to pull somebody out of Mexico. I never knew, I wouldn't even have thought of that. And just to have that experience, and it just sticks to me. And then the other experience, I guess I thought about maybe their case would be dismissed or something, but to actually go through it and make sure you're doing the right thing and standing up for everyone's rights made me feel like I'd done it for so long that I didn't lose sight of those things that I value, that I think a lot of us as lawyers get bad names if people aren't surprised by this. And it's nice to, and we've already seen this where everybody has talked about their experience, that we're not only lawyers and we're passionate about what we're doing, but we're also doing the right thing. It's not about winning and losing. It's not winning at all costs. It's just making sure the right thing is done and for the right reasons.
Alexia, what's the case you remember most fondly?
For me, it would have to be, it is 2 cases, but it's kind of interesting how one led to another. So first off, what ended up happening was I was reading the paper, Fresno Bee. I see in there's this woman, Patricia. She has this article and she's talking about how she's being harassed by her landlord, and everyone in her apartment complex is being harassed by the landlord. So I'm thinking, oh, that's so sad. I wish I could help her. Meanwhile, I had been volunteering at this little clinic, Tenants Together, to kind of give some rights to people who are being evicted. So I'm reading in this paper and I'm thinking, man, some of the stuff he's doing, shutting off the water and shutting off their power, and oh, these people. Next thing I know, I get a call from the person from Tenants Together up in Sacramento. She says, hey, Alexia, she said, I have these people from this apartment complex and they need help. Would you be willing to help? And I said, where is it at? She goes, well, it's at the Fresno Inn. And I'm like, yeah, I know that story. I just read it in the paper. And so a lot of people just wanted to write them off and not help this group of people because they assumed, well, oh, you live in the bad side of town. You must be addicted to drugs. You're not worth saving, not worth helping. And so a lot of people wrote them off. But coming into that situation, you realize there were families, there were people that were working hard, just trying to make it and survive on a daily basis. So going through that process, I represented 26 people, and we were, I was against this LA firm, and the big wigs, and here I am, little old me, and I'm like, well, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? But you represent with the vigor that you're going to do what's right. As Judge Tripp said, do what's right and bring about the best justice that you can bring about as an advocate. And so we ended up getting compensation for them. Then the next thing, I'm sitting there watching the news, watching ABC. I see all of these people in this apartment complex called the Somerset Village. They are without food. They are without electricity. They are without resources because the landlord decided he didn't want to make the repairs to the gas lines. So for a month, these people are in the cold, 39 degrees, and they're freezing. I said, man, I wish I could help them. I really wish I could help them. Next thing you know, I get a call from Kahua Lore, who is also a graduate, my friend from San Joaquin. And she says, hey, Alexia, I know you did that last case. Would you be willing to jump on this case with me? And because I know you have the templates and come on as counsel. So we did that. And in that case, once again, you're in that situation. Logistically, how do I get this done? You have people, you had 8 languages. So we had 8 languages. Everybody was primarily Southeast Asian immigrants. We had people who did not have mobile transportation to just come to an office. So we had to set up an RV as a mobile office. There were times I had to get a shuttle bus and literally drive people from the office to their apartments. I mean, things that you have to do in order to make it work for a community. And in the end, we ended up representing 168 families, which basically amounted to 2,000 people. We were up against an Orange County firm. Once again, how are we going to do this? You know, how are little OS going to do this? But you do what you can in order to help people as a lawyer and as an advocate. And one of the things that was so important to the community, I remember fighting for as a lawyer, you think, okay, I'm going to fight for money. I'm going to fight for this. I'm going to fight for that. We fought for the right to keep a garden, because within this cultural community, it was important that people had that right in order to garden, in order to keep an area for them, and to make sure that it was free from having their plants torn down and everything else. So that was nice to be able to structure an agreement that took into account the cultural differences, that had elders and leaders that would speak up for basically the group, that you know, we put a focus in on the garden, we put a focus in on what was important to them. And that was definitely something that will always impact my life.
So now I'm going to ask a totally different question, and Maribel, I'm going to go back to you. What do you remember about law school?
Wow, it seems so long ago. I would have to say, besides you, and I really mean that, I absolutely adored you. The people, there was this camaraderie amongst everyone. Now, I went to night school, and so my focus really was working until 6, driving like a mad woman to school, getting done with schooling, going sometimes back to my work. But through it all, I would just say knowing that I can come into your office and you were there, knowing that I could go into any professor's office and ask for help, they were there. And then in terms of the students, and I hear it even today, seems to be the spirit amongst all of us that we have justice at our core, but beyond that, it's also doing the right thing with it. And I don't want to jump ahead to any potential question, but I would say that it's just feeling home, not feeling the competition against one another, but feeling like we're all a team and we're all in it together. And I know, because I live in the Bay Area and I've lived in Irvine and lived out of Fresno, that there was always much more competition. And in our school, it didn't feel like competition. It felt more like support for one another at the level of student and all the way through, you know, our dean.
David, what do you remember?
A few different things. I'm going to say in the order of importance: friends, sacrifice, and feeling of strength. I met a great group of people in law school, and they're still my friends to this day. And we became very, very close. We spend so much time together. You get to spend more time with them sometimes than you actually get to spend with your own family members, which might not sound appealing, but when you have a great group of friends like that, it is great, because to this day, as I mentioned, I am still in contact with them. One of them is actually moving back, seeing him again. But that's one thing that we have. I mean, tons and tons of stories that we bring up, and whenever we get back together or just talk on the phone, it's like we pick up, right where we left off. So definitely friendship, and then the sacrifice. You definitely put in a lot of hard work and dedication in there. You know, if there's anybody out there who you know, says that, you know, it's a cakewalk, you know, oh, that person must be a genius. You know, it is tough. I know it was tough for me, but because of all of that sacrifice, that leads me to the third thing. Really, I felt strength. I felt strong at the end of it, because it's just so interesting that at the beginning of this, you feel afraid and worried, you know, especially coming from like a background of somebody who's never had any experience with law. You're wondering, where is this going to take me, and am I worthy of this? Can I compete with these other people? And as was mentioned earlier, at SJCL, I know it wasn't a competition. We were there to help each other and hold each other up. And at the end of it, you come out realizing that you're a lot stronger than you thought that you were. So those three things is, you know, friendship, sacrifice, and feeling strong, having that strength out for those three things.
The thing that is so gratifying for us as professors and staff is people just blossom. They discover that they are capable of doing far beyond what they were capable of doing, and they take off, just like the four of you have taken on. So Alexia, what do you remember?
I remember opportunity. Opportunity because for me, I was able to, because of the night classes, I could spend the day with my kids. They were very little. I could spend the day with my kids. I can make sure that dinner was on the table. I can make sure that everything was done. And then I could go to class and take care of me and, you know, take care of my future. So I remember that was huge for me, the opportunity to keep what I valued, but also have the flexibility to attain that higher education. And also participate in different groups and organizations, still with, you know, being mom too. David, he created an awesome organization, Lawsuit. And I remember showing up a couple to those meetings because I was a member, and I remember showing up with strollers because, you know, literally that's how I rolled, with a stroller. And I remember that, you know, it wasn't like anyone looked at me different. It wasn't like, oh, what is she doing? She's bringing her kids to this meeting. No, it was very welcoming. It was very understanding. It was a community that understood you are a human, you are a person, you have a life. And people you have to take care of, but you are also a committed law student. And so we want to welcome you and open you to the opportunities that you want to take advantage of. So literally it was just any opportunity you wanted to take advantage of, you could take advantage of. There were no limitations. Even if you had to bring your kids, there were no limitations. It was there for you.
Judge, what do you remember?
I remember the first time I was in the law school was one of these nights, and I just love that building. It's the old high school, the original Clovis High, I believe, right? So, and it's renovated. It's very beautiful on the inside, very beautiful on the outside. I know exactly where Dean Pearson is right now. So I remember that, and I think that's important because the law school has a certain intimacy to it that I knew I wasn't going to get anywhere else. That it's, you know, it's not a big class of students, but just enough that it felt you could talk to anyone. We all worked hard together. And it was same thing with the staff. I mean, everybody was approachable. It was set up in a way where you just felt comfortable, even though you were under a very stressful and trying to do something very difficult, because law school is not easy for sure. So I just felt always good about being there, and it was a good place to be. And I just enjoyed how it was well thought out. And even hearing the stories, I remember the stories you guys were in the other part of Fresno, and hearing about that version versus the newer building and how it was renovated and the cost put in and everything. So I think it's just got a rich history. A lot of people don't know about it. and then a lot of things, what we're hearing here today, it was a very diverse group, not like we would think a bunch of plugins. It was just diverse because this is what it fit a lot of people's needs. And so the diversity was created just on its own because the school exists really for a very particular set of people, meaning you could be going from undergrad right into law school. You could be doing a second career. You could be like me, kind of bumbling around, trying to figure things out, doing law school, maybe in the middle of your life. People that have had different jobs and they decide, hey, I could do what that lawyer does. And now they want to go to law school. So all these things were all there. And so we could all kind of feel each other's pain a little bit of going through it, but also very enjoy each other's company too, because we all saw ourselves, the person across from you saw the same person, or you understood what it's like having kids trying to go. I had my first $2 going through law school, so you understood that. Or so there's a lot of that going on, and so that's what I value the most, just the experience of having not a real traditional law school, a law school that really fit our community and fit the people's needs the best. So.
Yes, I remember the old building when I first got there. Brace yourselves. You had to go through the women's bathroom to get to the library. And that was one of the first things I changed. But don't have that problem now. So speaking about stress and difficulty in going to law school, what advice would you give people? And Alexia, I'll go back to you, to survive law school. What do they need to do?
I would say, well, I mean, they're going to give you great tips going into law school. Listen to everything the dean says, listen to everything your teachers say, because they are telling you the truth, even though you may think, oh, that's harsh. You know, I don't want to give up movies. I don't want to give up my, partying with my friends or what. No. Listen to what they say. They are really telling you the truth because they've seen people come, they've seen people go. So they are really giving you the best advice possible when you go through the process. So really, be committed to it. But if I have to say one thing about advice I would give, take time to think about what makes you special. What makes you special as a person before you walk into that law school, and what do you have to offer and give during your time at law school? Because as the dean said, you will grow. It's such a growth experience. But sometimes I remember walking in and you think, oh, everybody's so smart, and where do I fit in? And then you have people who are battling for ego sometimes in law school. That's not what gets you through. What gets you through is honing in on your special quality, because San Joaquin is so small that it allows that thing that makes you special to just grow. And then from there, you can take it and let it guide you into your legal career. And, just to give a couple examples, there was one person in my class, and he would always have his hand up, and it didn't matter how many times he got it wrong. It didn't matter how many times the professor was like, no. Hand was right back up, and he was ready to answer the next question again. And he had this just kind of attack, aggressiveness about him. Well, that makes him an amazing attorney right now, because it doesn't matter how many times he gets knocked down in the court. He really is getting back up again and trying to make it, happen all over again. He built that callus. And then another one of my friends, she was amazing at finding details and holding on to details. So in law school, she would just always do that. But for her career, she ended up becoming an amazing DA. And she handles major crimes. Why? Because she holds on to details. She let that guide her and blossom her into not being just a great law student, but also being a great attorney. I'm going to brag on David for a minute. David, when you did create Law Students United in Tolerance, that concept was to bring us together in order to create tolerance and civility. And, recently we had a situation where my firm and his firm had to come to some agreement. And he's amazing to work with as opposing counsel. The civility just shines through. But that civility was there in law school, and it just blossomed through the creation of an organization. And then he turns around, and that's the type of attorney he is. For me, like I said, being a mom, it's the nurturing. When I was representative, I put little words of encouragement and candy in people's boxes because I was used to dealing with like kids. And, everybody needs encouragement. And I find that in my practice, that's what makes me a little different, because I want to be there and nurture with my clients because I understand they're going through a hard time. And so it's that mom in me that kicks in. My point is, think about before you walk through those doors, what makes you special? You probably wrote it in your admissions essay. Hold on to that. We all have a special quality. Don't compare yourself to everyone else. Just work hard and do the best you can and use the opportunities at the school to grow that seed. And that will be the amazing blossom of your career.
Maribel, what advice would you give people to survive law school?
Well, I suppose I would need to know what everyone's kind of their journey. For some of us that work nights, and I did the 5-year program because I was working about 50 to 60 hours a week. So for me, it was balancing, understanding when I was going to carve out time for family, when I was going to carve out time for myself, but most of all, I think when I was getting tired. And it was like maybe a 3rd or 4th year, knowing that I still had some more years ahead of me, because for the most part, I was either working or just going to class and school. So for me, it was just focusing and disciplining and knowing that the end was almost there and not losing sight of it. No different than COVID, right? We keep hoping that next month, next week, we'll be back to normal. But what helps us hang on is that we know we've seen it before. So if anyone has had a little bit of accomplishment in their life, I would say it's the same thing here. Just focus and keep focused, especially when you're going to hear so many others having fun, doing lots of other things, and where you feel left out or alone. Just focus and you'll get there.
Go ahead, Sadie.
I'm done.
What would you recommend them? How would you suggest they survive law school?
I would definitely reiterate what it was already kind of mentioned a little bit before, but I always tell everybody approach it as if it's a full-time job. If you approach it that way, you definitely start off with just the dedication and the mindset of, okay, I'm going to put in a certain amount of hours. That's what I did. From as soon as I got up, I was hitting the books. Now, you also have to listen to yourself. You don't want to burn yourself out, but at the same time, as Alexia mentioned, and I do want to thank you, Alexia, too, for the kind words, but you also want to listen to everybody else. So the instructors, they will guide you. They are there to help you out. And, the upperclassmen, they will help you out as well. And they will show you what you need to do, what you need to concentrate on. It is very interesting in your first year to see which people think that they have it all together and which people you think have it all together. And sometimes it's just the complete opposite. And you're just surprised by everyone and including yourself sometimes. And so what that really goes to show is that you do have to listen to the people who've gone through this before, because they aren't there to steer you wrong. And then also, don't be afraid. Fear to a certain extent is very, very healthy. If the instructors tell you, study hard or put, a certain amount of hours in, listen to that. But don't be afraid to be wrong. Alexia was mentioning somebody who was raising their hand over and over and over again and getting the questions wrong. And that will happen. That will happen. And I remember in my second year, there was a particular instructor who it seemed to just struck fear into everybody. And I see people laughing because I already know they know who I'm talking about. And at one point in the first semester, I remember thinking to myself, oh, that person earlier got this question wrong. I don't remember how they got it wrong. And I don't remember what it was that they said. And then the following day or the following week, I didn't even remember who it was who got the question wrong. And then I thought to myself, well, wait a minute, if I don't remember how that person messed up, and I don't remember who the person was, I'm no longer even thinking about this person. But yet here I am with this fear in my head that I don't want to be wrong and I don't want to look silly. And then at that point, I just said, and I raised my hand, and I would get the questions wrong, and that was it, you know. And that definitely helped me out, because it is better to ask these questions and be wrong now than be out there in your career making the mistakes out there. You know, I train in martial arts, and when we do our training, we always practice certain moves and certain skills over and over and over and over again on the mat before a competition. You don't want to practice it out there when you're competing, because if you make a mistake, it can be very detrimental. So if you let go of that fear while you're in school, and you accept that you are going to be wrong, and believe me, law school is very humbling, you will be a much better advocate. You will be a much better attorney for all of that. So that is definitely my advice for everybody.
Judge Tripp.
So I don't want to sugarcoat it. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of hard work, a lot of hours, a lot of your, it does consume your life. Somebody said it's a full-time job. I thought it was 2 jobs for me. That's because I'm not that smart. So it takes twice as long for me to figure these things out. But I think you just got to go with that mindset. But then once you commit to that you realize you're going to have to put a lot of hours in, a lot of time. You're going to have to make sacrifices. That's been mentioned. Then you have to be very patient, not only with the process, but with yourself, because, and they told us this early on, I don't know if it was you, Dean Pearson, but somebody said, by the time you're done, you're going to be a different person. Your mind's going to change. And of course, I'm stubborn. I'm like, yeah, sure. I just want to get through this, go on in my career. And so I was very stubborn with that. And you finish, and maybe a few years down the road, you realize, you know, they're right. I did change. I didn't realize I don't even know what the old stuff even looks like anymore. So you got to be patient with the process. It's meant to work you. It's meant to get you to rethink things and to figure out these concepts in the law. So a lot of people have mentioned you're going to get things wrong. That's because you're thinking one way and you're going to start thinking a different way, and you're going to process the information differently. So so be patient with yourself. You're going to fumble. I don't know if I really spiked the football. You know, I'm a big sports guy, so I didn't spike the football until I passed the bar exam. That's what I felt like. So it feels like you're never going to spike this football until you pass the bar exam. So, and then the last part I said, work together. I found a lot of comfort in just working in these study groups, working on our outlines together, arguing over what the professor really said or didn't say. And that really fueled us along, because then we understood things better and figured out things better. So I would get into these groups from day one, find out people you click with, find out people that you are gonna sort of help. When you're down, they're gonna build you up, and when they're down, you're gonna build them back up. And the one thing I think I failed to mention, I never felt this law school was trying to kick me out. I never felt like I was just somebody that year one, there's so many of you just going to be wiped off the floor. They want you to succeed. This isn't a law school of attrition. It's a law school of, they want you to become a lawyer. And that's a thing, comfort I felt. I never felt like I'm just here signing checks to somebody or nobody cared. And I think you don't get that in too many places in the world. So, but if you kind of just understand that the patience, the hard work, and the commitment, you'll do very well. You'll make it, and then you can spike the football at the end when you pass the bar exam.
So what about family? How do you keep family from going ballistic because you're gone so much? We can take that one. Obviously, people had kids, so you had to make some kinds of adjustments. Can't hide now. You already know that somebody had.
So for me, we kind of talked a little bit about making priorities and making sure you understand what you're going to do going into law school. Biggest thing is understand what you can let go, which is like, okay, maybe you're not binge watching TV. If you're managing the family and managing law school, what you can do for that time is managing your family and managing law school. And that is rewarding. That is so rewarding. So things that I cut out, there was no binge watching TV. There was no mindless, movies that you would watch sometimes. My schedule was very, very packed. It was cartoons. It was, taking care of the kids. It was kids are down for a nap, study. It was kids are to bed early, study. So it becomes very structured. Get yourself on a structure and, you'll be fine. Your spouse, I was in one of the situations where I was the primary caretaker. My husband at the time, he was a police officer doing undercover narcotics. So it wasn't like I could say, okay, here, take the babies to work while you go do an undercover deal. No, it was completely 100% on me. But you structure yourself in a way that allows you to take care of everything that you need to take care of and make sure that you do set aside that time to study, even if it is when the kids are asleep or if it is, somebody taking the kids for a play date. One of the best advice that I received was from one of the professors, and it was going into the bar. And, I didn't pass the first time. And she said, look, honey, she goes, you need to go ahead and drop off the kids. And it was Professor Perrin, because she had been through that process of being a mom and then also juggling the career. Drop the kids off at mother-in-law's house right now and just study for the bar. One person that she'd given the advice to was so offended. Oh my goodness, I can't believe she told me that. I was like, what are you offended for? I'm thankful. I'm grateful. Yes. Kids are going to mother-in-laws. Don't be afraid to ask for help from family members to say, I need this moment to study for this test. Watch the kids. Use all the resources that you have. And it did work. That's when I did pass, when I said, here, mother-in-law, you're going to take the kids for a while I do some extra study. Rely on your family. Schedule it out tight. Remove the things that you do not need. Keep the things that are important to you. For me, it was, I was going to go to church, I was going to study, and I was going to take care of my family. And that's basically what I did. And it works out. Keep yourself grounded and healthy.
What about, I don't know what people's spouses were, but what about spouses? How do you make sure that spouses are committed and comfortable with you going to law school? Don't everybody jump in at once.
I'll take a crack at it. My wife's in another room, so she can't hear me. So I think it's the same thing I said earlier. You got to get your family to buy in, knowing what you're about to go through, and that this isn't a sacrifice for a week or a month. It's a big chunk of your life. And when you're going to make not only the financial commitments, but also just I wouldn't say it's a one-shot deal, because I said earlier, a lot of people come back and they go different backgrounds, but if you don't really commit to it and say, I've got to really focus, and it's way different than undergrad. And so you have to explain to them, this is what I'm going to do. And when you have somebody that supports that, it helps. But there's going to be ups and downs to it. You're going to go up and down. You're going to get a bad grade. You're going to get beat up by a professor one day, or it's just going to be a roller coaster. But you just have the commitment from your family. But I think this has been said a few times. There's a little bit of not just going at it blind. You do some planning. I had both of my daughters when I was in law school. I raised both of them when I was in law school. There were nights where, because I would go to school at night, so my wife would come home. She just got her first job as a teacher. She would come home, we'd have dinner, and then I would go to law school at night. So I barely saw her sometimes. But then when we committed to Saturday, I would do nothing. I wouldn't do any studying. This was our day. I committed to that. And then I would start back up on Sunday back. So we had a schedule and we stuck with that. So that's the kind of life you got to live. But at the end, you're achieving something that I would say a lot of people don't achieve because it is hard. But it's worth it by making the commitment to it now, not in year 2. And I realize life changes. Life goes on whether you want it to or not. So things change, but things change. You have to reassess, commit, and keep doing that process over and over again. I don't even know if I was expecting to have 2 kids in law school. I think about it now, it's kind of crazy, but it created a kind of a unique bond with my daughters and I, because we're connected in that way. But I think you just got to commit to it, understand what you're getting yourself into and why. And like somebody said, why are you doing this? If you understand why you're committed to it and keep reflecting back on that, you'll make it through.
David, you were going to add something to that.
Yeah, I definitely think that structure is the first thing that you should really look at. If you really want to get through and you want to hang on to some of those dates that you might have, day nights. I've been with my wife since we were in high school. And so we have been together for many years, and for the 3 years that I was in law school, to this day, she still says, I was single for 3 years. That's what she says. I was single for 3 years. But you do definitely have to have some structure. And as Alexia mentioned, you have to prioritize and pick and choose the things that you really can't live without. And as a society, we're always on the go, 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 go. But if you really dissect your day, you can trim off a lot of fat. And I know for me, there was certain things that I just couldn't do without, because it was a huge stress relief. Training was one of the things that I couldn't do without. So you really learn to kind of hack your days, so to speak. And so I did a few different things. Back then, smartphones weren't so smart. And I think I had a BlackBerry at the time, and there weren't a lot of applications. But I created, a lot of people will have flashcards. Well, I use this little app, and I created all my flashcards on my BlackBerry, and I kept it in my pocket instead of, people usually walk around law school with a huge stack of 3x5 cards. And I just knew that I wasn't going to be able to do that. So I put that all on my phone, I'd keep it in my pocket. And there were so many times in the middle of the day where my wife would say something like, oh, let's go out to eat, or let's go here or there. And I'd say, okay, let's do it, an hour tops or something. And then we'd get to the restaurant and we're sitting around waiting, it's a 30-minute wait. And I'm thinking, this is time I could have used to study. So I'd pull out my phone and I'd, start studying right then and there. I recorded myself saying these certain phrases, and I would actually go running, because that's, like I said, I couldn't get rid of my training. So I'd go running and I would just put my headphones on and I would just listen to these flashcards while I would go running. I would save time sometimes by running to school and doing my training that way. And that was my commute as well. So if you can structure it, and as long as you get your significant other on board and you let them know, look, I'm going to have to do this for anywhere from 3 to 5 years, you make it work. And then you come out of it and you realize, wow, I didn't have to do all of these things. I didn't have to binge watch all of these shows, and you can catch up on it later on. They're all on Netflix anyways.
I can remember hearing a group of people walking across the parking lot saying, what did we used to do with all this time? When they literally were just binge watching TV or just sitting around, and now they're studying. And that was quite interesting. Well, Maribel, I'm going to ask you, welcome to answer that as well if you like, but I'm going to ask you, what would you say to someone who was thinking about going to law school?
It's really open-ended. If you're thinking about it, then I would say do it. I say it because years before I went to law school, I had considered doing it. And I think I mentioned in the beginning that I delayed it because I didn't feel that I felt that it would overwhelm me. I thought it was going to take over everything in my life, including family, friends, etc. And I have to say it in so many ways it did, because I wasn't equipped to handle it, to really submerge into a full-time job, extra full-time, and then law school. But I would say that if you are considering it, I think the time is right. Just reorganize in the way that you can to be able to do it. One thing I didn't say, and I guess I would add here, is it was really important for me, if I wasn't able to spend time with family, that I remembered everybody's birthday. So I created a list, and those are the things that I would send mom flowers or send something, make sure that my nieces or my nephews knew that I was there on those major moments. And I remember there was times where they would say, I can't believe you made it. I'm like, how would I miss it, right? Like, how could I miss it? I'm your godmother, I gotta be here. And so for me, if you are thinking about it and you are listening, I think the time is right. And I think you're ready. And I would hope that fear doesn't delay you or stop you, because even in your fear, step in. I mean, most of us do that. And in fact, that's part of being an attorney.
Alexia, what would you say to them?
I would say to anyone who is thinking about law school the same thing. Do it. When I was in this position, thinking about going to law school, a lot of people would tell me, oh, I thought about going to law school. I thought about going to law school. And I'm thinking, okay, why didn't you do it? Even the first year, when you actually go to law school, you will hear everyone tell you, I was thinking about going to law school. I was thinking about it. Then do it. The only way that you're ever going to know what you could possibly achieve with your future, with your advocacy, with your voice, with your moral compass, with what you want to do in this world, is just to do it. Because that's when you put yourself to the test. And when I say put yourself to the test, you definitely will put yourself to the test. That being said, there is nothing more rewarding than coming out the other end and understanding that you went through the fire and that you were a stronger person. And now you have the tools and capability to actually give yourself and your family the future that you envisioned like 5 years ago when you were right here in this moment. So I would tell people, don't hesitate, because you're always going to receive a reason why you should probably not do it, wait till later, put it on the back burner. You've heard from Judge Tripp, you've heard from myself. I mean, if having kids in law school isn't enough to say, hey, I can't take this sacrifice right now, then I don't know what is. But at some point you have to just say, you know what? I'm going to make it through this. I'm going to have to work harder. I'm going to have to be more structured, but I will do this for myself. And you've heard the many blessings that the panelists have been able to do, the cases, the impact, and what it's meant to them, just being able to take that step. And there's a lot of times I think, wow, all the people I would not have been able to help if I was just still sitting on the couch thinking about going to law school. So very, very, very thankful that I didn't just think, I did. And I encourage you to do the same.
Wow, Judge Tripp.
I would, if you're thinking about it, I would just present that question yourself. Well, why are you thinking about it? What's important to you? What's attractive to it? And then talk to a lot of people that have done it. There's plenty of lawyers to talk to. I was thinking about, I had very good mentors, and they would talk to me about what it's like to be a lawyer. And there, in any profession, there's a lot of things you could sit there and go, well, this thing, that thing's bad, but that's in every profession. So there's no perfect profession out there, but if you're passionate about the law and wanting to, and I think we've heard this theme over and over about making a difference with somebody. You can't do that sitting on the couch, for sure. You can't do that by binge watching TV shows, for sure. But you definitely can do it as an attorney. You can help somebody that you didn't even know existed. You can help somebody with a problem you didn't even know was a problem. You can create friendships and bonds that you wouldn't have had but for being an attorney. And like I've already said, attorneys get a bad name, but there's far better attorneys very conscientious, great attorneys out there than there are bad. The bad ones get all the attention. The ones that do their job and do what they're supposed to, you never hear a word about them, but they're all out there. They're all working hard. They're all wanting to make the profession look good. Nobody wants their profession to look that way. Sometimes maybe we should stand up for ourselves a little bit more, what we're doing that's so valuable, because we do have value. So I think when you look at all those things and that's probably what's interesting you, then you should take that step. And it is scary because you're wondering, can you do it? Are you capable? And I think Alexia said this will put you to the test. It's going to test your strength, your wherewithal, all of it. But I'm grateful for that, because then at the end, it's given me way more back than I ever really gave in, I think. And it's given me opportunities that I just never would have thought. I come from a little town. You say the town's name, nobody knows it exists. And it just feels like I accomplished, a lot of people call it the American dream. That's what I feel like. And it was only because I took that step and just did it because I had this love for it. I thought I loved it until I went through it, and I really love it now. And so that's why I think you should do it. If you're sitting here tonight, you're on the verge of wanting to go forward, might as well go forward with it.
Wow. David.
I would definitely reiterate that same thing that everybody else said, which is if you are thinking about it, do it. I think about myself back in high school, and I think about being in my teacher's class where they're having the debate, and I think about what would have happened if I didn't ask to go into that debate. What would have happened if I didn't take that risk, if I didn't make that jump? Would I still be here? So you really never know. So you won't find out unless you ask to get in there. Be that student that raises their hand. You will never know how strong you really are until you try. So if you're thinking about it, give it a shot.
And basically, one of the things you're saying is that you learn more from your mistakes than you learn from getting just stuff straightforward right. I want to take a few minutes now. If anybody has any questions to put to the panelists, this would be the time. And maybe Diane can help us with that. Have there been any questions? I saw a hand go up and then it disappeared. So I'm just wondering if anybody has questions.
I think
I see
somebody
one
asked a
there.
question in the chat.
Yeah.
When you first entered law school, did you know what area of law you wanted to practice?
Well, I can answer. I'll start. So I did. I knew that I wanted employment law because I love the idea of equal opportunity for all, whether just because I was a second child or I had to kind of get that equal opportunity. But for me, it was just the passion for employment law was basically the civil rights in the employment world. So that was my reason, but I did know.
It doesn't matter if you don't know when you're going into law school, and many people come in with one idea and change their mind. So, Alexia, you were trying to answer that one.
I have a question.
Oh, okay. Real quick, I was just going to add, for me, I thought I wanted to do workers' comp because that's the industry that I was in before. And then I jumped to a workers' comp field when I graduated law school. Through the process, though, you realize what's important to you. And for me, I realized, man, your eyes open up to what a lawyer can do, how a lawyer can help, whether a lawyer helps a person with evictions, whether a lawyer helps a person with 2,000 evictions. I never thought that I would be doing civil litigation in the areas that I did end up doing. But as you grow in practice, you realize the power and strength in what you can do for other people. And that sometimes navigates you to a different field.
Thank you, Alexia. We have a question from Mario Najera. If you'd like to ask your question, Mario, and you're welcome to turn on your video or unmute yourself.
Oh, okay. Can you see me? So I'm most definitely gonna go into law. How difficult is it to start your own practice for you guys that have your own practice? Is that, I mean, I don't want to work under somebody. I want to do my own thing per se. How difficult is that in your opinion?
David, do you want to take this first or?
Well, I definitely think you can add a lot more than me, but I'll give my 2 cents because there's definitely different paths to it. So for me, I actually became I was hired onto a law firm, then I became partner, and then after that I became owner and slowly bought it out through what we would call sweat equity, bringing in cases. And so I actually didn't have to start it from scratch. It was actually something that was already kind of, the ball was rolling. And then after putting in hard work, I inherited it, well, so to speak, I bought it out. And that definitely kind of comes with its, own pitfalls. It's difficult because the benefit is you see something that's already in the works. It's a wheel that's already turning. But then at the same time, you have to kind of make it your own. And so that is definitely difficult. And I don't think that it's something that can easily be done, but I think that Alexia can also offer some advice and give you a little bit more of insight to opening up your own practice from scratch, because that's actually what she did. And so I'm going to turn that over to you so you can kind of chime in for a little bit.
Okay. So for me, I always knew that I wanted to go into my own law firm, at least for a while. I knew that that was something that I would, that was attractive to me. So I did do an internship and I did work for a solo practitioner for a while. And I told him, hey, what I want to learn is how you do what you do and how you manage your business. And he was more than happy to say, okay, if I could get some good work and you want to learn how I do it, then that's fine. Then I went and I worked for an insurance firm, great, awesome firm. But I knew it was time that I really wanted to start my own law firm from scratch. I basically used my lunch hours to study every book about law management, opening your own law firm, how much was it going to cost. I used my bonus checks from the law firm I was working and stashed it aside every quarter, so I would have the cash to start my own law firm. And I wanted something that was different. I didn't want to go into the same type of area with insurance defense or anything like that. I wanted to go into something that was really kind of for the people and more dealing with a lot of public interest type of issues. And the way that I structured it was, I structured it where, hey, we open later because you need to drop your kids off to school. I close earlier because, hey, 3:30, you got to get out here. You got to go get your kids. And that's the way I always structured things. That's the way I always had it. It was functional for a person who has a family. That was important to me. And a lot of the people and paralegals that came in and out of my office were single moms. And it was one of those things where, hey, we're going to get you going. We're going to get you some experience. I want to make sure that when you leave me, you are better off than when you started. And so starting your own law firm, it is a challenge from scratch, but definitely can be done. And the beautiful thing is you do structure it around your own values and what you find important.
How did you navigate from representing defense to prosecution and now being a judge?
I think you said earlier, Dean Pearson, about you go into law school maybe not knowing what you're going to practice. I thought I was going to do, first thing I thought I was going to be a prosecutor. And it didn't quite work out that way. I actually did criminal defense. I did civil for several years, then a prosecutor, now a judge. And navigating through that, what I think of, there's commonalities there, meaning the law is just application. You read a section of the law, if you go to the Business and Professions Code, the Civil Code, the Criminal Code, they all have words and they have meanings, and there's case law. So if you're open to allowing maybe the law to kind of guide you on where your career may go, then you'll be open to finding these new experiences. And that's what I was open to. I didn't think, oh, I just don't ever touch civil ever. I did it for a time. There's things I enjoyed a lot about, things I didn't. Criminal defendants, I didn't think that's something I would automatically go to, but that was my first job. There's lots of things I loved about it, things I didn't, and so on and so forth. So I think just being open-minded, the law, and we've already heard of so many people, workers' comp, we've heard about different types of litigation. There's so many areas of the law that are there, and sometimes you don't even know exist till you run into somebody there's law practice for that. You don't even know that. So I would say keep an open mind to that, because then when you get an opportunity, might be more willing to think about it. I almost had a job at the Fresno Community College being their in-house counsel. I would have never thought that I would have done something like that. So you just got to be open-minded to it and think the law's vast. It's just application. It's just when you start in something, you got to have a learning curve. You figure it out. But then you're going to have these experiences. If you just say, I can only do this, then you're really limiting yourself. So I was just open to anything. And when opportunities came up and I felt I was ready, I took advantage of it.
Another question, time management. What would be a good expectation for the amount of hours we would need to devote to studying? Maribel, can you tackle that?
Yeah, I probably would say 25 to 30 hours. Part of it is because I was distracted, right? So I was working full time, and during the week I couldn't study. I had to go to class and work, but during the weekend is when I studied. And it was probably about 25 hours a week on the weekend. And that meant listening to all my recordings from class. And I did do that. I was concerned that I was so tired I couldn't focus in class. So that's what I did. Flashcards very much helped. And then creating cheat notes as soon as possible. So that if you can get certain resources from, and I don't know if they still do this, but you're assigned a mentor, and that mentor generally will give you some cheat notes of some sort, and then you can study them. So you can continually be learning, whether you're running, whether you're eating, I don't know, driving at a stop sign, anything like that is what I did. So, but for the most part, I would say about 25 hours dedicated a week.
What do other people think?
I came in terrified my first year, so I said I'm gonna do 40 hours a week, and so I really did. I did 40 hours, and I don't remember if it was after the first semester or after the first year. I want to say it was after the first year. After the first semester, I realized, okay, I'm gonna be fine, and I kind of scaled it back, and I actually started doing other things, and that's I started one of the groups on campus. And started doing a little bit more extracurricular activities as well. But I did that for myself because it was so that I was playing it safe so that I can see how much time do I actually need to put into it. And so I just kind of was out of abundance of caution, threw in tons of hours in there. And then once I realized, okay, I can scale it back, and now I can go back to working out and training, and now I can go back to having some extracurricular activities, and I did scale it back. But I think everybody, you're unique. You're going to be able to figure it out kind of on your own. My piece of advice would just be to be overly cautious at first, and then to kind of scale it back, as opposed to not putting too much hours into it, not putting enough, and then regretting it later. But that's what I did.
I'll add in on that one. Because when I think back, it was actually somewhere around 20 to 25, just as Maribel had said, somewhere in that neighborhood. But that was afterwards. The first year, one of the professors provided this. I can't remember, it may have been you, Dean Pearson, but they stated that in the first year, your brain is getting used to reading that amount of material, What does it mean? What am I looking for? What is she asking me about this holding and this analysis and rule and conclude? What am I looking for on this page? So the first year takes more hours because you have to actually train your brain to understand what is it reading, what are these words on this page, and how much material am I able to soak in one section reading. After that, it gets faster the second year. I'm able to understand it. I understand what these words are. Third year, got it. I know exactly where it's at. Fourth year, right there, right here, right there, and you're going. So take all the time that you need in the first year. If you're struggling and you see it is like 50 hours or however many hours, it's okay. Just keep pushing, because you will go faster and move through material quicker as the years go on. So it will not be as bad as your first year, but you got to get through your first year.
Okay. That starts to answer another question that was asked, and that is, how long did it take to start to better understand legal reading? And I think you've answered that question. And now here's a long question. I've been a paralegal for 8 years. I even worked for Goldberg and Ibarra for a short period. Smile. As a staff member, I am off the hook once I clock out, and the liability is always on the attorney. How do you manage so much responsibility and getting the work done on all your cases? I feel like attorneys don't get free time.
You
Sure,
really, well, hello, but you really want to go back to your training in law school, which is you have to have some structure. You definitely have to have some structure, because yes, you will not have any free time. You will multitask. One of the things that I was actually going to mention when I scaled back, and it's strange, because what Alexia was mentioning not only occurs in law school, where you grow and you start growing, and all of a sudden you start getting better and better at it, but it actually happens after law school as well. So for me, the first semester, like I said, I put in tons of hours in there, and then as I mentioned, I started to kind of scale back, and then I actually realized, okay, with this extra time that I have now, I can make a couple different choices. And I actually read ahead an entire week for all of my classes. So the reading that was supposed to be done, that I would normally be doing today, was actually for the following week. That's how far ahead I got. But it was great, because it actually gave me the ability to have freedom to say, if my wife said, let's go grab a bite to eat, I wouldn't stress out, because I was already ahead, but because I structured myself that way. And the same thing happens once you graduate from law school. You start, at first with a certain level of stress, and then you start getting faster and faster and faster at it. And you really do have a choice to make once you start getting some of that free time. Am I going to use that to sit down and binge watch something, or am I going to use that to maybe get ahead and plan ahead and start working on some of the other cases that I might have pushed a little to the side? And if you do that, then you aren't always looking at the clock and wondering, am I going to have time to put my kid down? Am I going to have time to go out and get a bite to eat? So yeah, you definitely are pretty much on the clock, especially as an owner. You're on the clock quite a bit. But if you don't allow yourself to fall behind, and you don't use that extra time that you get when you grow to just slack off, then it actually doesn't feel that bad, because you're used to it from law school, really.
So I wanted to add on this one. So I started doing California, employment law, and now I handle all of USA. So anything from Colorado, Arizona, Massachusetts, all of them, right? And so then when I got, recently we had someone leave because we're going through a merger. And I now have had some responsibility for India and the Philippines and Thailand, and then all the COVID orders that happen. And I will tell you, probably the way that I keep up, because I'm the only employment attorney for the USA and Canada, is that I learned the public policy behind it. In law school, one of the things that was really important is understanding public policy. right? So all of us know this. Notice is really important across every area of law. So oftentimes when I'm learning a particular law, I'm learning the public policy behind it. So if, for instance, I could learn that Canada has a particular policy regarding something, I then immediately begin to build upon it and then go all the way through, I don't know, Texas through California. And then after a while, you get to see some things that are very similar, and that's the way that I can memorize it. But I'm constantly, it's the only way I can do it. Like tonight, I'll be on the line for trying to figure out my COVID cases, because Thursday night is COVID orders for, you know, the whole world. And it gets challenging, but it's understanding what is the policy behind it, where we are in COVID, for example. Are we opening up? Are we not? What are some of the limitations? So getting to the core of the particular law is how I am able to manage it. And in terms of litigation, when I had cases, and there were so many, I think constantly making sure I had some order to my litigation. I had some dates, and you know, paralegals are amazing because they keep you on your toes on the dates. But just understanding that if I had to put like triggers, you know, I don't know what they're called, ticklers, where I would always understand that I have something coming up, and I would just plan a few days, because it always seemed that right the day that before I had to go argue a case, something came up, whether it was, I don't know, a niece having a birthday party that I forgot, or whatever it might be, an emergency of some sort. So planning ahead, and for me, it's learning the core of the law so that I could apply it even when I don't know the law. I could understand if the purpose was this, then it may be equally applicable in a different area.
That's a really good point. When you're in law school, not trying to just memorize law, but you understand the reasons behind the law. So we're going to wrap this up pretty quickly here, and I'm going to ask Judge Tripp to start us by what are the closing comments you would like to make to students, prospective students?
What I would say is it's a good opportunity if you want to go to law school and become an attorney. It's challenging. It really pushes yourself to really, I guess, really understand parts of yourself that maybe you didn't even know existed. So for me, I was very shy, timid. Speaking from anybody would have terrified me. I think in high school I spoke. We had a speech class, almost passed out trying to do it. And then I'm arguing cases in front of juries and convincing them of, you know, I had proved my case, and talking to commissions and different things like that. So there's a lot of potential out there. You just don't know. And I don't know of too many professions that allow you that much growth. And I'm confident in this one. Now, it's a stressful job. I'm not gonna lie. It has a level of anxiety that it's hard to describe, but it's very satisfying too. So you get a good mix of both. I would really, as you go through law school, you get a good taste of that, and then you become an attorney. The one thing I wish I would have known starting this whole process, and I don't know if it would have mattered to me, maybe I'm just built a certain way, but you got to understand you don't have control over the situation. All you can do is be prepared. And if you're prepared, the law is going to go the way it's going to go, but you're going to be satisfied with what you put in. And so if you kind of let that go, because lawyers have that in them, they want to control everything, or always be right, or always have the right answer. And that's what adds the stress, because someone else is relying upon you, or has hired you, or wants an answer for you. We all get this now. Everyone, this panel, Dean Pearson, we're all gonna smile because somebody comes to your family and says, and you have nothing to do with this area of law, and they'll ask you some question as if you're supposed to know the answer, right? So I bought a car the other day, and the contract says this, is that what it means? And I'm like, I haven't looked at a contract since law school, right? So, but that's kind of the fun part of it too, where you get to, you know, I guess understand how things work in a different way. You understand how it functions in our society a better way. I think a lot of people have gone through this law school, have all these vast experiences of some people probably don't even practice law. They're just doing a particular field somewhere, but the law school allowed that avenue. And so I think it's important to just keep an open mind to that. And it's opened a world to me that I could never have imagined even existed. I was able to go to San Francisco. I flew a little tiny plane going to depositions in Santa Monica. I mean, these aren't, I mean, and you would think, well, what's the big deal? But to me, that was a big deal. Just having those experiences, you know, because I'm a pretty simple person, but it opened all these doors that I would have never had I not just gone to law school and really took the profession to heart. The other thing, and I think is important, that everyone here has shown some level of emotion and some attachment to a case, something about what they're doing. And again, a lot of professions don't give you that. So as much as sometimes I say the stress and how much hard work you have to put in, it gives you these things that you're just not going to have any experiences for. I met the Chief Justice of the California Supreme Court because I went to law school. I was able to stand in their chambers when it's empty and look at, there's this beautiful painting on the wall there because I went to law school. So there's a lot of things that you just don't know what's going to happen. And I think if you take it with the passion you're thinking about going into it, it just rewards you over and over and over again. And maybe it lets you appreciate how the world works in a way of why some things aren't as easy. That's complicated, right? It always is. And it probably always will be. But that's the fun of it. So if you want to be challenged, if you want to be pushed, if you really want to learn about yourself and maybe have experiences that you cannot have in any other place, then I would definitely take the pursuit. So I'm happy I did it. I'm grateful every day, even during the hardest times I've experienced through the practice. I think one year I worked 80 hours a week for about a year or two. I think I was making $12 an hour when I calculated, you know, as a government job. But I wouldn't have given that up for anything. It was just a lot of fun. So that's my 2 cents.
Thank you. David, what about you?
Yeah, a few different things. But the judge kind of touched up on one of the things I did want to mention, which is that there is something really fun about having so much knowledge and so many doors that open up for you. And he mentioned that, you know, probably all of us up here have had a family member come up to us and ask us, you know, for me, it's always my niece who will ramble some set of facts out and say, is that legal? Can they do that? Or what does the law say on this? And I sometimes just say, I don't know, but that is fun for me because I don't know every single area of law, but yet I have people who think that I have all of these laws like a Rolodex in my head. But the interesting thing about that is it actually doesn't really matter if you have these laws memorized, because you can, if you want to, go into that area of law, because law school teaches you how to think a certain way. And so you can adapt and you can learn a whole different area of law. And you can actually do things that don't really have to do with being an attorney. You can, the degree opens up so many doors that you don't have to just become an attorney. You don't have to just become a judge. I have so many friends that just jump into different areas of just line of work, and it's not just being an attorney. But that's one of the fun things, is that you just have so many opportunities available for you. There's so many things that you can do. Now, I did want to add a couple of other things as far as SJCL, San Joaquin College of Law. One of the things that I do tell people who are thinking about it, or people who are going to be students in law, I tell them, look, if you're going to be staying local, if you plan on practicing in this area, SJCL is perfect, because you get to know tons of people in this community. You get to know the judges. The judges will come in and teach a class. You get to actually get internships in this area. I offer internships to people who go to SJCL, and so those are definitely things that you wouldn't get if you went to a big school in a big city. And for people who are thinking, well, but I do plan on leaving the city, I do plan on going somewhere else. Well, that's another reason why you should choose SJCL, because the cost of SJCL is going to be way better than going to a huge law school. And so that is a big plus. And the last thing that I would say to the students, and the judge kind of touched on this as well too, which is I have this saying that I tell young attorneys when I talk to them about how it is being an actual attorney when they first pass the bar. And I always say that my worst day as an attorney beats my best day when I was not an attorney. And I remember specifically having a day like that where I felt like this is the worst day I've ever had when I was an attorney. And I thought, but man, it's still way better than when I wasn't an attorney. And I'll leave you with that.
Maribel, what do you want them to know?
Gosh, I have so much. So let me begin with this. I want to kind of touch on, some people have asked, does going to law school, if it's not ABA accredited, matter? Initially I thought so, but I can tell you now, working in the Bay Area and the Googles, the Yahoos, everything like that, they're more concerned about what you've done in law school, what you've learned, as opposed to whether you're ABA accredited or not. So you'll notice many of the companies are removing those standards. And I think I'm so grateful for that because it's given so much opportunity. So I want to say that because I know sometimes people wonder, what if I leave the area, am I going to have to be ABA accredited? Not anymore. It used to be maybe at some point, but that's completely lifted. I would say almost universally, at least in the Bay Area, because what they're recognizing is the people that make it through law school or the people that make it successfully in the workplace are not necessarily the GPA, but really what you've done to demonstrate that you've become an attorney. Now, some of the things that I also want to say is I am incredibly grateful to be an attorney. My first language is Spanish, and I studied in Mexico to learn Spanish even better because I'm half Puerto Rican, half Mexican. So I had to spend a lot of time studying, even just the language. But one of the things that I would say that law opens up for me is the opportunity to meet so many people at so many different levels. My mentor is a justice of the federal court, appeals court in Los Angeles, and I would have only met her had I probably been in this role. So I'm really grateful for that. But also financially, yes, attorneys, sometimes we do well, sometimes we don't do well, but when we do well, the great thing about that is we can share the wealth. And I think that is phenomenal for me. I love the idea that I could just, when there is a death of some sort, I can spend a couple thousand and just give it. And I absolutely love that. And then probably the last thing, it's so rewarding and I hope this is not too sensitive to say, but sometimes I had smoke damage in my home and I've had to deal with so many contractors. And I can tell you, having learned everything that I learned in law school in terms of contracts, they don't like to deal with me because I do fine tooth those contracts. So learning the law is much more than just about being a lawyer. It's really intellectually incredibly satisfying.
Alexia.
I would say that, for closing, I would say that when I was going through this experience, I did not have the mentors. I did not know anyone who was a lawyer. I had no clue at some point what the LSAT was. I thought it was just a test maybe on Saturday. I had no clue what LSAT even stood for. What I did have, I had a drive. I wanted to be a lawyer. And I had Dean Pearson in these panel discussions. That's what I had. I had panel discussions. I had practice LSAT at the SJCL. I had any type of information meeting that they had. I had no one else to ask, what do you do? How do you become a lawyer? What is it like being a lawyer? No one. So definitely, I hope that you've had some information. And if you still have questions, just shoot them out because it's important to use the resources that you have. Not everybody has a resource that they can go to and ask tomorrow, hey, what do you think about this? Being a lawyer, what do you think about that? What I would do, I would take the information that I received from these meetings. I had it like a checklist. Okay, I have to have an application. I have to go get my transcripts. I have to take the LSAT and get this. And I literally just check it off. And then the next week, go look up something else and check it off until I had all of it and just turned it in. So don't feel bad if you do not have the resources to figure out how to get this done. Just ask the dean, ask the admissions counselor, ask whoever you can in order to get you to the place that you need to be and at the level that you need to be at. And then when you are in law school, if you are struggling in any way, shape, or form, reach out to your professors early and talk to them about maybe your difficulty understanding. Maybe they can point you in a different direction. Maybe they can point you to a study group that may be good for you. I had a study group that was comprised of another mother, and our study groups were like Bratz dolls, juice boxes, goldfish crackers, and law books. So they may be able to pair you up with somebody who can help foster and help you through the process, because the school does not want to see you fail out. And also for me, when I think back through my experience, I am so thankful that I was able to actually achieve this, and that San Joaquin created a space for people like me to become attorneys, because, you know, it's important to have the ability to stay in the Valley. If you can't afford to live in LA or live in Sacramento or San Francisco, you need to be in a space where you can live off of one income and still achieve your dream. Or maybe you just, you know, use the help and financial help that you have. Point is, it's affordable to live in San Joaquin. It's a closed community with the college. You know, they help you. You create these bonds that some of the people have already talked about. Just to share, my first job, I was so scared because I thought to myself, I was in the middle of a recession. I'm like, how am I going to get a job? What am I going to do? Now I have this law degree and I passed the bar, but I may be unemployed forever. And I had a job within a matter of weeks. Why? Because I put in my application. Little did I know that that firm already had 3 of my classmates working there. And they went around and said, what do you think of this person? What do you think of this person? Now, keep in mind, we were not buddy-buddy in law school. I was not in the same group as these different women. That being said, they knew that I showed up, I was in class, I was in my seat, and I tried hard and studied my hardest. So they were able to vouch for me. And that's that camaraderie that you hear people talk about. So it helped me network to get my first job, but I didn't know that these people actually vouched for me or that they even worked for the firm. So those are the things that I appreciate, the fact that I was able to make those network and those connections that ended up helping my career go further.
Well, what an incredible group of people. You all have been very lucky to hear from all these people. And I'm gonna cry now. It always helps to remind me why I have done this for the law school for so long. So thank you to all 4 of you for coming, and thank you for all of you who chose to attend and get the benefit of this information. I'm just overwhelmingly impressed by these 4 people. So thank you. Thank you.
Ah, Jan.
Have a good night, everybody. Hopefully I actually get to see some of you again sometime, and hopefully I'll get to see some of these prospective students sometime. So
Yeah, good luck, everyone. Jan, thank you so much. And Diane, also thank you. And hopefully we'll all see each other someday.
I had some other questions, but we'll try to answer those with the individual people. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dean
Bye.
Pearson. Thank you, Diane, for creating this space.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you all for your leadership. Thank you, Dean Pearson. Good night.
Good
Good
night.
night.
Good night.